Shalom. First off, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Baruch. I want to give double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS who have taught us this word and teach us this word today. And I want to give a salutation unto the elect of the nation of Israel. This is the brother Yatazakba with the GMS Nebraska camp. And in this lesson, what I want to get into is looking at something that happened in the book of Tobit, and what we can take from it, because what specifically I want to speak about is what happened to Tobit himself and what happened to Sarah, his daughter-in-law, through the book of Tobit, where at the beginning both Tobit and Sarah, his daughter-in-law, they prayed to be put to death, and they prayed for that because they was going through rough situations. We look at Tobit, and he was smitten with blindness, as well as at this time the northern kingdom of the nation of Israel is under the Assyrian captivity, and Tobit was right along with that, because he was from the tribe of Naphtali, and Tobit also had to deal with false reproaches. Reason being, when one of his fellow brethren would be put to death, he will go and bury the bodies, which was a very commendable thing to do. Not only because that's a honorable thing to do to bury your fellow brother, that was being slain and just laid out in the streets, but also because there was a law which I believe Sennacherib put out. Which, hold on, if I go to chapter 1 real fast. Yep, when we look at Tobit chapter 1 verse 18 or verse 17, it says and really we can start at verse 16, because all of this that we're about to read is going to further add to the point. But let's get Tobit chapter 1 verse 16. It says, in the time of Enemasar, I gave many alms to my brethren, and gave my bread to the hungry, and my clothes to the naked. And if I saw any of my nation dead or cast about the walls of Nineveh, I buried him. And this was Tobit's character. He was a very generous man. There's a lot of scriptures that we read in the book of Tobit which pushes the spirit of giving alms and charity, because that's the spirit that the Lord had put on Tobit. He was an upright and righteous man. But we read in verse 18, it says, and that the king Sennacherib had slain any when he was come and fled from Judea, I buried them privily. For in his wrath he killed many, but the bodies were not found when they were sought for of the king. So he had to, basically do it secretly, and in verse 19 it says, and when one of the Ninevites went and complained to me to the king, that I buried them and hid myself, understanding that I was sought for to be put to death, I withdrew myself for fear. So Tobit was getting told on, he was, being looked for because he was doing this deed of, burying his brethren. And it was it was a heavy thing. So now he was going through that, and, going through people talking about him, the reputation that people, held against him. And then he got smoked with blindness. So he was going through a lot. And so when we read in Tobit chapter 3 and verse 5, it says, and now thy judgments are many and true. Deal with me according to my sins and my fathers, because we have not kept thy commandments, neither have walked in truth before thee. Now therefore deal with me as seemeth best unto thee, and command my spirit to be taken from me, that I may be dissolved and become earth. For it is profitable for me to die rather than to live, because I have heard false reproaches and have much sorrow. Command therefore that I may now be delivered out of this distress and go into the everlasting place. Turn not thy face away from me. So Tobit prayed to be put to death for all the things that he was going through. And when we look at Sarah's situation, we read something similar. Now, Sarah's situation was different in the aspect of what her plight was, because what Sarah had going on was that there was a demon named as Asmodeus that was preventing her from being married. Every time the marriage, every time it was the night for the marriage to be consummated, Asmodeus would put the husband to death, will put Sarah's husband to death. And I believe this happened 7 times. So Sarah prayed to the Lord as well. And what does she say? In Tobit chapter 3, verse 11, it says, Then she prayed toward the window and said, Blessed art thou, O Lord, my power, and thine holy and glorious name is blessed and honorable forever. Let all thy works praise thee forever. And I want to put it out there that Sarah was a righteous woman as well. Hey, we see how she opened up her prayer. She opened her prayer up by giving all praises unto the Most High. But we're going to read on and just show that Sarah was, an upright woman. It says, And now, O Lord, I set mine eyes and my face toward thee, and say, Take me out of the earth, that I may hear no more the reproach. Thou knowest, Lord, that I am pure from all sin with man, and that I never polluted my name, nor the name of my father, in the land of my captivity. I am the only daughter of my father, neither hath he any child to be his heir, neither any near kinsman, nor any son of his alive, to whom I may keep myself for a wife. My 7 husbands are already dead, and why should I live? But if it please not thee that I should die, command some regard to be had of me, and pity taken of me, that I hear no more reproach. So she was praying for the same thing. But the beautiful thing about the book of Tobit is that even though they was both going through what they was going through, and they both prayed for death, the Lord, sent them something better. The Lord took care of them. And we read about what the Lord did for him here. When we read at the end of Tobit chapter 3, verse 16, it says, So the prayers of them both were heard before the majesty of the great power. And Raphael was sent to heal them both, that is, to scale away the whiteness of Tobit's eyes, and to give Sarah, the daughter of Raguel, for a wife to Tobias, the son of Tobit, and to bind Asmodeus, the evil spirit. So, they both prayed for death, but the Lord, answered their prayer by blessing them and in their predicament. He sent the angel Raphael to heal them. And why is that? That's because of their righteousness that they were doing. Because when we go to Tobit chapter 12 and verse 12, it says, Now therefore, when thou didst pray, and Sarah thy daughter-in-law, I did bring the remembrance of your prayers before the Holy One. Right, this is the angel Raphael saying that he was one of those angels that was bringing, the prayers unto the Lord. And we read about that in the book of Revelation, where it talks about the angels which, have the prayers of the saints in their cisterns, but it says, and when thou didst bury the dead, I was with thee likewise. So let's read 13. It says, And when thou didst not delay to rise up and leave thy dinner, to go and cover the dead, thy good deed was not hid from me, but I was with thee. So the angel Raphael is saying that he was with Tobit the whole time. He was doing his good deeds. When he was going to bury the dead, he was recording that. The angel Raphael was with him, and he was witness to his good deeds. And the same way he was with Tobit, and he seen all the good that he was doing, it's the same thing with us. The Lord always has, angels around us recording our deeds and sending them unto, Yahweh Ba'ashem Hawashai, the same way that we read here. And so, this reminds me of the precept. Let's get it in the blue letter. Hebrews chapter 6, verse 10, which says, For the Most High is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor of love, which ye have showed toward his name, and that ye have ministered to the saints and do minister. And so, the same, what we read in the book of Tobit, the same thing can be applied to us. The Lord won't forget the good deeds that we have done, for his name. The Lord won't, the Lord won't fail to recompense us for our well-doing. And things get low for us. We get in real low points, and we're going to get in lower points than we have been up to this point. But we have to keep in mind that the Most High isn't going to just leave his servants and leave those who have been, doing good unto him. He won't leave them out there stuck. Let's read this again. It says, For the Most High is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor of love. And he didn't forget Tobit's work and labor of love. He didn't forget Sarah and, her living righteously. And so even so, that's why that angel was sent to heal them. But let's go back to Tobit chapter 12, and we'll go to. Nah, yeah, that's good. That's all I wanted from Tobit chapter 12. And something else that was, that stood out to me is that even though they both prayed to be put to death, the Lord knew what they needed. He didn't listen to that prayer. He gave them something better. And the scriptures say in Romans chapter 8, verse 26, it says, "Likewise, the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered." And that's what we seen happen with them. The Holy Spirit made intercession. And it was all through this. It was it was through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, and it was because Tobit and Sarah were living righteously. So they were rewarded even though they weren't looking for that reward. They were rewarded even though they were just ready to be put to death. And the same thing is going to happen to the Lord's, elect. The same thing is going to happen to his servants. Even when things get as low as, when we in Jacob's trouble, the Lord is going to, bless us at the end of the day. The Lord is going to deliver us, even in our lowest times. And so let's get Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20, which says, "Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us, unto him be glory in the church by Yahweh Shai HaMashiach throughout all ages, world without end. Amen." Let's read that in verse 20, in the NLT. Starting at verse 20, it says, "Now all glory to the Most High, who is able through his mighty power at work within us to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think." And that's what happened with Tobit and Sarah. He gave them so much more than they was looking for or asking for. And that's why we have to believe that these things can be, can happen to us. The scriptures written aforetime were written for our learning. So the same way when they was at their lowest and, their hope was low and, they weren't necessarily asking for healing. They was just asking for, the evil to be taken away from them. Well, the Lord took the evil away from them at a much, by blessing them. And that's not even what they were looking for. But through the Lord's power, just like he could do that for them, he can do that for us. But and Salaki, I know I'm being repetitive with the point, but it's an important thing to keep in mind. That's why let's get Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, which says, "And let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." So, through all the different things that we're doing, through all the sacrifices we're making, through the consistency that we show, through the times that we, reap unto the spirit and not the flesh, through all the wins that we amass in this truth, those things are being recorded. Those things are, won't go amiss, as long as we continue. Because it says, "Let's not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." So unless we give up and we stop and, we just stop doing what we doing, then, the scriptures say that we have to continue, that we'll be rewarded if we faint not. It says, "As we therefore have opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith." And we learn this from Tobit himself, to continue to give charity, give alms, to do good unto, the hopeful elect around us. And alms isn't always in the form of money. It wasn't when it came to Tobit. Sometimes just doing something, you don't feel like doing. Sometimes it's being there for a person or for a brother, for one of the hopeful elect. It comes in more ways than just giving money, but that is what it is too. But it's just being, upright. It says, "Let's do good unto all men." That's not, it doesn't say anything specific. It just says to do good unto, the hopeful elect around you. So We just have to continue to, to put forward good works, continue to do well in this truth, because it will be rewarded. The elect will be protected and delivered out of different situations in these times to come, and you know, our recompense won't fail. So Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. Once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Baruch HaKodash. I want to give dub honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS, and a salutation unto the elect. Shalom.